We are live now, Chair.
Thank you. I will ask each person present to confirm that they can hear and be heard. Where practicable, please also have your video switched on. So we have some new members to the forum this morning that we'd like to welcome. We have Kate Andrews. Maybe not yet. We have Adam Breakwell. Maybe not yet. We have Stuart Debenham, but we know already that he is arriving late. And we have Kate Joyner.
Good morning, nice to meet everybody.
Good morning. We have Beverly Blower. Alex Davis.
Morning.
Good morning. Paul Deneen.
Morning.
Morning, Paul. Richard Foster.
Good morning.
Good morning. Nikki Gilbert.
Morning.
Oh, morning, Nikki. And Andy Goslin. Georgie Griffin. Paul Jennings.
Morning, Chair. I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Good morning. Tim Knapp.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Tim. Chris Lewandowski.
Good morning, all. I can see and hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Rose Lloyd. Claire Perez. And Rachel Usher.
Good morning, everyone. I can see and hear. Thank you.
Good morning. We also have officers that may be in attendance this morning. We've got Stacey Carter.
Morning.
Morning. Liz Farr.
Morning, everyone. I can see and hear you, Chair.
Thank you. Isabel Gibbs.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Hilary Jones.
Morning, everyone. I can see and hear you.
Oh, morning, Hilary. And Louise Tanner. Okay, thank you, everyone. The agenda, papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel, and a recording will be available via the Council's website shortly after the meeting has concluded. Please use the raise hand icon to indicate that you wish to speak. Please remember to lower your hand again after you have spoken. Where forum members are required to vote on an item, we will conduct an electronic vote. If there are problems with the electronic vote, I will ask each member in turn to indicate verbally if they are for, against, or abstaining. If a forum member has not been present for the whole of the discussion on an item due to technical failure, they should not vote on that item. Are there any questions about the procedures before we continue? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 1, which is the election of chairperson. The custom for Herefordshire Schools Forum is for the chairperson to serve 2 consecutive academic years. I've really enjoyed the 2 years that I have been chair for Schools Forum for, but I'd like to now nominate my successor, and I propose from the chair, Paul Jennings.
I'm happy to
Have
second.
anyone to second? Oh, thank you, Paul. So Paul Jennings, the seconder is Paul Deneen. Are there any other nominations this morning?
I see none, Chair.
Thank you. So the candidate has been added to the voting system, which will appear shortly on your screen. Please cast the vote and press the submit button.
There are a couple of votes outstanding, Chair, but we've got an overall majority there, so I think we'll take that. So I congratulate Paul Jennings, who's now become chair of the forum. Thank you very much, Alison, for your 2 years. Really appreciated.
Thank you, and good luck, Paul.
Thank you very much, Alison. Huge thank you from me and from everybody else. I'm sure for the last 2 years, you've done an excellent job of chairing Schools Forum, and we've made some really important decisions and move things forward. So thank you for the time and dedication that you've shown to that. And I only hope that I can do anywhere close to as good a job as you've done. So thank you. So in my newly elected role as chairperson, I have to move to item 2, which is the election of a vice chair. And I would like to nominate my successor as vice chair, and I'd like to nominate Richard Foster and propose him from the chair. Do we have a seconder for Richard as vice chair? Thank you, Paul. Are there any other nominations for vice chair of Schools Forum?
Again, I see none, Chair.
Okay, there we are. So if we could add the candidate to the voting system, please, that will appear shortly on your screen. Please cast your vote and press the submit button.
Again, a few votes missing there, Chair, but that's an overall majority. So, Richard, congratulations. We'll formally elect you as Vice Chairperson of the Forum. Thank you, Chair.
Many thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Clark, and congratulations, Richard. We move on to item 3, then apologies for absence. Have we had any apologies, please, Clark?
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from Hayley Mann. Sorry, bear with me. Hayley Mann, Gemma Martin, and also from officers, we've got apologies from Wendy Pickering and also Cabinet Member, Councillor Ivan Powell.
Thank you. And are there any name substitutes this morning?
There are none, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 5 then, declarations of interests. This is to receive any declarations of interest by members in respect of items on the agenda. And are there any declarations of interest this morning?
I'm a trade union member.
Thank you, Paul.
District Secretary, thanks.
Chris has got his hand up. I think you're muted, Chris.
Right, yeah, I'm also a trade union member, and that comes up in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest this morning? I can't see any more, Clark. Thank you. Item 6 then, to approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of July 2025. Are there any matters arising which are not dealt with elsewhere on the agenda this morning? No. And are there any comments that anybody would like to make about the minutes? No. That's all looking good to me. So if we could please bring up the voting screen. If you were not present at the last meeting, you should select the abstention option to the vote to approve and sign the minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, they can be approved, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So to item 7, the Dedicated Schools Grant 25-26 Q2 outturn, which is to provide an update to Schools Forum on the Dedicated Schools Grant outturn as of the 30th of September 2025, the end of Q2. So I call upon our Head of Strategic Finance, Stacey Carter, to introduce the report. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you, Chair. Right, I'll just share my screen with you. I'm going to talk through the presentation that we shared with Budget Working Group on the 7th of November, which supports the report of Forum. You just confirm that you can see that for me as that comes through.
Yes, I can see that. Thank you.
Lovely. That's great. Right then. So the first report then, yes. So the Dedicated Schools Grant. So what we have here is the first table kind of the report, kind of talks through the kind of position in terms of the DSG. So overall for Herefordshire, we have £114 million worth of funding for the DSG, for the Dedicated Schools Grant. And at the start of the year, we were budgeting for approximately an in-year deficit of around £20 million, which was all around the high needs block. The latest forecast position, based on the September information that we have, is showing that has reduced down to £17.5 million. So it's obviously still significant, but it is good that it is kind of moving in the right direction, and we've had a reduction there. So what I have on the next slide for you is a little bit more information than is in the Schools Forum report, but it just gives you an idea of some of the activities of the high needs block. So, you know, which is useful information for you. Now, what we can see is there are lots of ups and downs within the service areas that we have within the high needs block, but the main reasons for the reduction of 2.5 million of overspend is due to reduced complex needs costs and fees to independent schools, and also alternative provision, which is being offset by increased top-up funding that's going to mainstream schools, pupil referral units, and resource bases. So, you know, we can kind of see there that how that £17.5 million overspend is made up. What I have on the next slide for you is just a cumulative position. When we ended the financial year in 24-25, we had a cumulative deficit on the DSG of £20 million. So obviously with that 17.5, we're looking at £37.5 million cumulative deficit at this point. Now, the DfE have confirmed that the statutory override on the DSG deficits for local authorities has been extended until the 31st of March 2028, which is good news. It doesn't solve the problem entirely, but it just pushes it a little bit further down the line. Now, work continues on assessing what the impact is of the latest pupil numbers and demand, and we will update Schools Forum at the January meeting once we've kind of built all of that into the assumptions for the 26-27 funding announcement, and once that's been assessed, really. So I'm going to hand over to Liz to talk through the management kind of actions that have been taken in the service on the deficit plan.
Thank you, Stacey. Good morning, everyone. We had a look at the deficit management plan last time, so I thought I'd provide you with an update on where we are. Just to pick up on Stacey's comments there, it is pleasing that we are slowing the rate of increase of overspend, and that's really against a continual rise in demand in Herefordshire that reflects very strongly the picture we're seeing nationally. So we continue to see a growth in pupils with EHC plans in Herefordshire. We continue to see capacity reached in our special schools. We have continued to expand our resource-based programme, but nevertheless, we are seeing growth, as the slide indicates, in the numbers of children attending independent placements. There's some other helpful contextual information there for you in terms of the growth in primary needs, including in SEMH, significant growth in that area in Herefordshire, and also in terms of ASD. You will note that we'd forecast to be 1,939 plans by 2027, and we've already exceeded that number. So the growth continues to accelerate. Equally, we continue to see growth in the early years and post-16, as well as increases in some of those other arrangements, such as educated otherwise than at school. So continual pressure on the system in Herefordshire in terms of the rising demand and an SEN system that wasn't set up to deal with these scenarios. Thank you. So just a reminder here, we introduced this last time to get working with finance colleagues, school colleagues and the service. We have a deficit management plan. And really just to emphasise that the core aim here is to do our very best to slow spending. It is unlikely we can recover that deficit, but we are doing all we can to slow spending. But the drive here is to create sufficient spaces in Herefordshire to meet the rising demand. That's our first aim, really. So we have 4 main work streams, which I will cover very briefly in the next few slides, where we are looking at intervention, how we can try and influence under the existing code of practice the demand for plans and specialist education, how we can work with our limited funding to increase efficiency in our local area. And as you would expect, we are always working closely to see how we can make the pot of money work hardest for Herefordshire children. So in terms of intervention, we've got a couple of slides. You'll be familiar with the actions that we have identified previously, but I've given a very brief update here in terms of our work in these spaces. So perhaps I'll draw your attention particularly to our strengthening intervention pathway. Our secondary school colleagues will be aware of the Harvest project, which runs out of HPRS. We are also developing a more rigorous, comprehensive pathway for SEMH, including short-term intervention spaces as well as long-term intervention spaces for key stages 1 and 2 initially. And we continue to work closely with the county's SENCOs to support them in their work. Thanks, Stacey. Okay. We've been talking to schools recently about the strengthened inclusion support offer in Herefordshire. And we think that this will put us ahead of the curve in terms of the reforms that are coming. So having intervention advisors, specialists available to schools to support them in mainstream inclusion. And you'll be able to read more detail about that on Spotlight as it comes out. And we've also done some work at our head teacher groups in terms of what that offer looks like. And so specialist teachers across a wide range of primary need will be available to schools to support them in meeting children's needs in mainstream. We've strengthened our training offer across the county, making more training available to our schools. And the quality assurance work that we've undertaken to support schools in the delivery of Section F has really embedded and has been helpful in our mainstream schools. Thank you. Managing demand, this is obviously a little bit trickier, really. And we can only respond in the frameworks that we work in, but we have a much stronger commissioning presence in our children's services space now, which is supporting us in strengthening some of that work. And we are also developing a sort of task force model around HPRS. This is coming through the Send an AP Change programme to make teams of practitioners across a wide range of expertise wrap around our most vulnerable children and be very accessible to them. So that includes things like education psychologists, mentors, some of our teams from social care and so on. So we're developing that task force model to provide greater support. We continue to develop business cases which have significant support here at the council in terms of expanding our offer to our schools, and that includes work to develop a more robust AP pathway. And I've already touched on there our inclusion support offer, which will include more outreach teachers. We've learnt from the success really of our SEMH inclusion team, and are expanding that offer across a range of primary needs. So there'll be more availability for specialist teachers and support staff to support our mainstream colleagues and ultimately try and keep children in mainstream and have their needs met well. Improving sufficiency of local places. This is an area that is, in my view, requires additional government funding to support us here. But with the funding that we have available to us and the projects that are announced through government, Herefordshire has a high rate of success at getting yeses to the bids that we make, which is helpful. We are expanding Hampton Dean LCC, so we have additional spaces. That work is now complete. Work at Brookfield is underway. This will particularly enhance the curriculum at Brookfield, our SEMH school, but we also think it will enable some additional capacity. Also, that work is well underway. Westfield Special School, we were successful in our bid to the department as part of the rebuilding project. Feasibility has been brought forward, and we are expecting fulsome conversations with the department around that project. We are also undertaking work at Ryfield Centre in Ross, which will create 40 places for MLD, our first MLD provision in Herefordshire. Work's has slowed a little on that project due to some building complications, but it's underway, and that centre will open, we think, September now. We are exploring the relocation and expansion of HPRS and in part to increase capacity, as well as expanding age range potentially to provide a fuller pathway in Herefordshire. Thank you, Alex. That's nice to see a thumbs up. We are looking at extending our AP pathway in Herefordshire. Our secondary head teachers have been very involved in some work there, which we are still committed to develop a richer AP offer. And we were successful with our bid for a new free school for Herefordshire, free school special school, which would provide an 80-place facility for complex autism and SLD. I have spoken previously about my frustration that there are no timescales from the department with that project yet. We're not engaged in conversation around feasibility, and that mirrors the free school project across the country. You can't really describe it as delays because there are no timescales, and that in turn adds pressure on the high needs block when you don't know when you can deliver these places. We continue to develop our resource-based model, and it's interesting that those things are coming through some of the kind of reform work that I read about, and you'll be aware of the number of resource-based provisions we've opened in the last couple of years. We are continually grateful for the support of our mainstream schools that work closely with us to offer those provisions available to children across the county, but located in those mainstream schools. I visited the bases at Ayleston and Trinity, and I'm really proud of the work that's happened there to facilitate those projects. With an eye on the future, our projections suggest that in Herefordshire we have room for 2 SEMH special schools. So I'm citing colleagues on what the future might look like. And finally, we continue to work on our financial management of high needs block very closely with our finance colleagues to see if there is any efficiencies that can be gained What I would say, just in terms of summary, is it's pleasing that the projected spend for the high needs block has slowed, influencing the size of the projected deficit, and that in part has to be down to some success here with the strategies that we are implementing, because demand has continued to grow exponentially. Thank you. I think that was my last slide, Stacey, was it? Yes, oh good.
Thank you both for presenting those two reports. Effectively, we've covered off agenda items 7 and 9, I think, with those two reports. Obviously of great interest and important as we're moving forward. Richard, as Chair of Budget Working Group, do you have any comment that you'd like to make on either of those two agenda items?
Thank you, Chair. I think as a group, when we met and discussed, we really recognised the positive work that has been done and the impact that it's having. So there was a real feel of positivity, despite the financial challenges about what was in place, what was happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Any other members would like to comment on either the deficit management plan or any comments on the Q2 outturn? Paul Deneen.
Can I just say huge thanks and congratulations to Liz and the team there. This offers a menu of opportunities for the young people in this county, and excellent vision there, and supporting the most vulnerable is most important, and also supporting schools. So I just think an opportunity of where there's a challenge, you look for opportunities, and rather than looking at complaining, etc., I think there's so much on offer now, Liz, to support young people. And I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the trade unions and the schools, really. The issue I wanted to raise is about rurality, because I'm very concerned, for example, that a lot of these young people will need, for example, traveling to schools. And I noticed there's a report in the Hereford Times about costs of travelling and the exponential increase in travel costs. I just wondered, what the situation is regarding the travelling costs and what can be done to mitigate that, or can we use that in our sort of, if we're talking to government officials, say, hang on a second, you need to understand what things like in the rural counties as opposed to just the cities.
There's definitely pressure on transport costs. You're absolutely right. Hilary, Head of Additional Needs, and myself both sit on a group that meets regularly with the Chief Executive, and we have a number of work streams looking at how we can manage the costs of transport, around some efficiencies, and actually I must thank Paul at this point as well, our schools and providers who have worked very much closely with us around how we bring about efficiencies in how we're transporting children. But that wider point around the pressure that all of this brings into transport has been represented back to central government on behalf of all of us as a local authority. Absolutely, I concur.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Chris Lewandowski.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to echo Paul's comments in thanking Liz for her presentation. It is obviously a very complicated situation and it takes a lot of time to digest the information. I note that the Budget Working Group had a presentation on the 7th of November. I note that Liz has also promised regular updates to the Budget Working Group team. In future, would it be possible for any such presentations and updates also to be given or available to members of School Forum who are not on the Budget Working Group? Because it would keep us informed as well, and it would give us time to digest the information before the actual Schools Forum meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm bringing it here today to Schools Forum. I also take much of the content to head teacher meetings and engagement as well. But absolutely, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't come into that category though.
No. I presume you didn't receive the report in advance.
No.
Is that the point? Okay, so we'll make sure it is available, and I will speak to Jen and make sure that is an action that we take, Chris. Not a problem.
If we could actually attend the budget working group presentations, we could then ask questions as well, which I think is important. Thank you.
Thank you both. Kate Joyner, please.
Apologies being new if this question has already been answered. Please feel free to tell me if it has. There's clearly a lot of work going on to ensure that we reduce the higher level needs deficit. Have we considered that by reducing that deficit, we may move that deficit to the schools block by having the resource bases?
Liz, did you want to come
I
in
think
there?
that's a question for Stacey, probably.
Thank you, Stacey.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, could you just repeat that question again for me, please? Just in terms
of course. Stacey, if this is a repeat, please feel free to tell me, because obviously I'm new to this. But have we looked at the risk of moving the deficit from higher level needs to the schools block by having the school resource bases?
Right, okay. To be honest, I've got to be honest with you, Kate. I am new to the authority. I've only been here kind of 7 weeks, so I'm not sure in terms of whether we've explored anything there. But certainly in terms of where the funding sits, the resource bases, I understand, are funded through the high needs block.
Correct.
Anyway. And then the schools block is kept separate for the maintained and academy schools to be run through there. So certainly in terms of that deficit would be ring-fenced to the high needs block, is my kind of understanding.
I agree, Stacey. You can't move the blocks around, Kate, really. So the deficit will always say sat within the high needs block, and that's where resource bases are funded from.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. I just wanted to make
sure
that
we weren't
the question.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure we weren't just shifting the issue.
No,
not at all. No.
Okay, thank you both. Nikki Gilbert.
Hi. The investment in Key Stage 1 and 2 is obvious and happening. I was wondering if there is a future plan, because what's currently happening is we're giving a lot of support to Key Stages 1 and 2. Hampton Dean, Trinity, Leicester, everywhere. But with the best will in the world, not all of those young people will suddenly be fixed and be able to access mainstream secondary. And at the moment, there is a year 7 influx to both ourselves and Bars Court from those bases. It's early days with the Key Stage 1 investment, obviously, but those students, and I understand that we're hopeful for the free school of complex ASD, but I just need to ask the question, being an all-through school, where is the plan for those Key Stages 1 and 2 investment when they become Key Stages 3 and 4, if they have been previously attached to mainstream provision, not necessarily just because of ASD, the learning, language communication, they end up at the moment coming to ourselves. Is there a plan for one or more of the secondary schools to actually replicate what is currently happening in the primary schools?
Yeah, thank you, Nikki. We have expanded some of the provision across the secondary space as well. I'm particularly minded of the Ayleston base that I talked about earlier. We do track the cohorts through in terms of our sufficiency, and you're absolutely right to highlight that growth. And we've seen it now in the last couple of years, particularly in early years coming into primary. So our sufficiency calculations do track those cohorts through, and I'm always aware of, just when I've done something, I've got to look at that cohort moving through and what happens next within the limited resources I have. I've had some interesting conversations this week with the head of service, and looking at that, and you'll also know about the opportunities that some of those projects talk about giving us for expansion in the secondary phase. So it's a point well made. I am critically aware of that growth that's coming through into secondary, as well as being minded, of course, that we all await government reforms and how potentially that might influence the system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Alison Banner.
Thank you, Paul. So at EMC, just up the road from Nikki in Westfield, we have one of the resource bases. The need identified is ASD. We have found and discussed with Hilary as head of service very recently, but also on an ongoing basis from a secondary point of view, challenges accommodating children when they do hit key stage 3 and maybe moving into key stage 4 in a resource base. So I wanted to perhaps reassure Nikki that those conversations at the very local level that we share are continuing. In the most recent discussion earlier in the autumn term, we were looking at whether we expand the base and perhaps change, amend, add to the level of need that we can accommodate. However, it would be fair to say that I share those concerns because knowing that Leominster Primary is doing some fantastic work and has a very large base and is accommodating and supporting children with very high level needs, it is certainly a concern over here about what will happen when those children move through. But I know that we have a very open approach to that. We are having plenty of discussions about that, and I think it's a case of waiting to see, but with an eye on the fact that we are looking at that when those cohorts move through. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Are there any other comments on this or these items? No, thank you. I mean, the reports were just for noting on this occasion. So we'll move on or back to agenda item 8, which is the Schools National Funding Formula 26-27 update, which is to provide an update to Forum on the Schools National Funding Formula 26-27, including the recommendations of the Budget Working Group on the Herefordshire Schools budget. So I call upon our Head of Strategic Finance, Stacey Carter, to introduce the report. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you, Chair. Just share my screen again. Right. Hopefully that's just coming through for you. Right, okay then. So at the time of writing the report for Schools Forum, we'd not received an update from the DFE regarding the National Funding Formula, the operational guide. However, that has been released this week along with some technical guidance. So from looking initial kind of review of the documentation, I mean, it's quite involved, there's a lot to work through, but it does look like the formula funding model hasn't changed significantly, which is what we were anticipating. With the same factors applied as in previous years. So in the Schools Forum report, we were proposing to apply the principles that we used for the 25-26 budget, which are to fund schools at the national funding formula values, to fund the minimum funding guarantee at the maximum of 0%, and then to also continue with the de-delegated budgets. So when we chatted through this with Budget Working Group on the 7th of November, it was recommended that the schools budget be prepared on that basis, which I'm sure Richard will kind of talk about it at the end as well. So really what I wanted to do is then just talk through the bits that we know around the grants that are going to be merged in. So we do know that the schools budget support grant and the national insurance contributions grants will be rolled into the national funding formula this year in the same way that other grants have been allocated in previous, I think it was 25-26, we had a few going into the base budget there. We also know that schools will receive additional funding for the extended entitlement for free school meals from September 2026, with further details to follow. The DFE haven't mentioned kind of what those grant allocations will be yet, but we will keep an eye out and report on that as soon as we know. We anticipate that the final NFF allocations will be released by the DfE week commencing the 15th of December. So we will start working on the budgets over that Christmas break and present them back to Budget Working Group and Schools Forum in January for further consideration. Let me just see. Yes, okay. So just in terms of an update from a local perspective, we just wanted to update that there will be, confirm that there will be no longer a top slice of the schools block because the SEN protection scheme will cease for 26-27. And we also have some separate reports on the agenda, which you will have read, around the disapplication request and also the de-delegated services. So at that point, I'm going to stop sharing and then hand over to Paul with regards to the vote.
Thank you very much for that update. I'd like to invite Liz Farr to make any comments.
No real comments. Yeah, I think the announcements were as expected, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. And Richard Foster, do you have any comments on behalf of Budget Working Group?
Similarly, we had a good discussion, discussed the information Stacey gave. We agreed it's challenging with the DfE delays sometimes for the from what we take from there. So we felt it was a very sensible option going forward. So we do recommend that this was moved forwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any other comments or questions from members of the forum? Chris Lewandowski. You're muted, Mr. Lewandowski.
There we are. Thank you. If we're looking for future funding 26-27 and onwards, a slightly different tack. As I understand it, there was a significant drop in the national birth rate during the COVID years. This drop is now starting to reach schools. The questions are, how significant was the Herefordshire drop in the birth rate? How will it affect the future funding of schools? And it goes on. Has the birth rate now returned to a normal level in Herefordshire? For stability, schools need to know what's going on and have their finances sorted. It would be a dire situation if they were to make staff redundant 1 year and then 2 years later recruit them as numbers fluctuated. So if there is a dip in the birth rate and pupil numbers in schools, is there any way that that can be cushioned by getting the national formula adjusted? Or is there anything we can do about this drop if it happens in Herefordshire? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. It's an interesting question. Is Liz, are you the best person on this one?
And Louise Tanner may possibly come in here as well. So we did see, Chris is right in his observations that the birth rate has fallen, and we know that offers for reception were some of the lowest numbers we had seen, and that was certainly impacting our primary school numbers on roll. Our census information suggests that we are seeing those numbers climb again in years coming forward. So there has been a dip. It mirrors the trend nationally. We've seen that our schools in the main have been sustainable in terms of that, but obviously there is a link, Chris, with pupil funding when numbers dip in our schools.
Thank you, Liz. Louise, did you want to come in on this one?
Just to say, yeah, we track birth rates quite closely. This academic year for reception going in is we project our lowest year going in, and like nationally the birth rate starts to tip back up again. the birth rate decline actually predated COVID. So the year 6 that have just left primary school were our biggest year group, and it has been declining since the year 6 that have just left. So we're their current year 7. So we're seeing a slow decline. Herefordshire haven't seen the great drop off that other local authority areas have seen, but again, we don't see the massive rises that other local authority. So we tend to be slightly more stable than other local authority areas. Just to add, sorry, into the mix, we are seeing still considerable, reasonably considerable numbers of in-year transfers. So that's people moving into county, which whilst it's hard to plan for that, it does bring some stability in terms of funding and numbers across the school.
Thank you, Louise. Paul Deneen.
Could I just be reassured that with all the significant planning developments that's going on within the county, that education and local schools are benefiting by any such schemes, and that there are conversations going on within communities, and particularly with the head teachers at local schools, about what funding might be available to them so that they can then use that with regards to any development or plans that they might have for their schools?
Absolutely. I think, Paul, you're referring directly to the Section 106 contributions that are available. There are some nuanced planning regulations within entitlement to Section 106 funding, which you may be aware of. But there have been some wonderful projects across the county as a result of Section 106, including libraries, development of facilities, all sorts of things. I'm very happy to bring a fuller update on how education has benefited from those contributions. That element of work sits within the Economy and Environment Directorate, but I am connected to some of that work. In terms of the planning demands on the county for new housing development, I can again provide some assurance that education colleagues are working very closely with our planning department about what the impact will be on schooling more broadly in the county if there were to be the delivery of some of those housing targets.
Could I ask then that perhaps rather than a presentation, I think just a list of what funding has gone to what communities, got Hereford City and all the market towns, what funding has been made available to those communities with regards to that, that would be helpful, I think. And also to make heads aware of what may be potentially coming or may be available to help them with any projects that they might have as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. That would be very useful. Just from our point of view, for the first time in its history, hopefully in the next 12 months, Fairfield will have its own full-size pitch as a result of 106 money that's coming from the development at Hawthorne Rise in Peterchurch. So we are seeing some of those benefits.
Good.
Are there any other comments?
Can I just add as well? In terms of Section 106 contributions, it is linked with the size of development in a local area. My understanding is that developers often phase their projects in order to manage their Section 106 contributions. So when development is phased, that can sometimes limit what we see in as Section 106 contributions, but I'm happy to provide that list. Obviously, what I would say is there is regular comms from our comms team about projects that are as a result of Section 106 in our schools, and I will collate that information and share it.
Could we push back on that a bit, Liz? Would you mind? I'm been reading some articles about this developers, this sort of funding over time. If there's a project going ahead, they should have the money up front, not say, well, we'll give you this bit of money now while we build this bit. I think that it's not helpful to have, there's a holistic decision about having a development. Therefore, there's a whole fund available rather than giving it out in dribs and drabs, which is, I think, is unhelpful for particular projects. If somebody wants to do something in the community, for example, say we've got a little bit of funding now, there may be a bit more coming. If a planning application has been approved, then the builders or the company knows exactly what their plans are, and therefore they should fund the whole thing as it is, not piecemeal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Richard Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would fully support what Paul has suggested there, because we've actually, in my current school, suffered from that, where developments have been done over time. So there's been no funding that's actually come into the school because it's been a way around it. So
yeah, I think it's a creative way that developers are utilising, and I think we've got to stop. We've got to send the clear message out. The council have given you planning application. The planning application has been granted. This is the fund we expect, and we do not expect it in dribs and drabs. We expect one whole amount, because that'll help projects then.
Thank you, Paul. That's a good point, and an important one. If there are no other comments, then Clerk, please, if we can now take the vote to agree the draft 26-27 budget to be prepared in line with the approach taken in 25-26. And if you could show the voting screen, please. Everyone, please cast your vote and press the submit button. If you can't see the voting screen or are unable to vote, please raise your hand.
Just one vote missing there, Chair, but a majority of 13 votes out of 14 to agree. So we can agree that recommendation, Stacey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On to agenda item 10, which is the request to the Secretary of State to disapply the school finance regulations. This is to request the continued support of Schools Forum in respect of a disapplication request to the Secretary of State for Education for exceptional circumstances for Eastner Primary School's rent of additional classrooms. And I'm sure Forum members are aware that this is an item that comes up annually, but I'll ask our Head of Strategic Finance, Stacey, to introduce the report. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you, Chair. Right, yeah, it is quite a simple one. Let me just share my screen, which I'm not doing very well. Not so simple. So this is just part of a formal process that we have, really, to request permission every year from the Secretary of State to disapply the school finance regulations where we have exceptional circumstances. And at Eastner Primary School, we are in a position where the school has to pay £17,000 per annum to rent sufficient spaces to educate their children on roll at the school. So this is something that would, if we didn't approve this at Schools Forum, it would be a detriment to the education of those children at the school. It is something that Forum has approved previously, so it's just really that formal recognition and vote so that we can go back to the Secretary of State to say that you are in support of that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. Liz, have you got any comments that you would like to make on this agenda item?
Not at this stage, thank you, Chair.
Okay. I'll go to Richard next, just to make sure we're covering the Budget Working Group position. Any comment from you, Richard?
Just to say the Budget Working Group discussed this and agreed to fully support the disapplication request.
Thank you very much. Chris Lewandowski.
Thank you. Right. Now, thank you, Chair. Although I don't disagree with this motion, just a question. As Eastner Primary is an academy, why is the Academy's fund not dealing with this, and why does it become a local authority problem?
Thank you, Chris. Who would like to come in and address that question?
Shall I comment from a financial kind of regulation perspective? So the situation with the exception of funding is that, and for academy schools, we have the allocation coming to the local authority for all of our schools within Herefordshire, and we complete the APT tool. Basically is a tool that we have to complete once we've run all of the local funding formula through for all of our schools, including our academy schools as well as our maintained schools, and that is just part of the process that we have to go through. and you know the funding needs to transfer to the school, and the local authority has the responsibility to undertake that disapplication on behalf of the whole pot of money that we're looking after.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. Are there any other comments or questions that members would like to make? No. Okay. Thank you. So we'll now vote to approve the disapplication request in respect of Eastern Primary School. I'll ask the clerk to bring up the voting screen. Please cast your votes as normal and press the submit button. If you can't see the voting screen or are unable to vote, please put your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. That request has been approved.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Agenda item 11 this morning is the Dedelegations and Education Management Function Proposal 26-27 to request schools forum to agree the dedelegated services and education management function for 2026-27. And once again, I call upon our Head of Strategic Finance, Stacey, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, right, let's see if I have better success with sharing my screen this time. There we go. Okay then, right. So this report then is really setting out kind of we didn't understand whether we knew that the operational guide will give us the permissions to do the dedelegated services again for 26-27, but the scheme has actually with the operational guide that's come out, it's been confirmed that we can do that, which is what we anticipated. So when we wrote the report, we were proposing to fund the services as previous years. So stick with the services that we have and inflate them in line with the school's block inflation, which last year was 2.36%. So that was the basis that we kind of wrote the report. What we have here, apologies for the small slide, it you know, some of those numbers are quite small. We have sort of replicated the 25-26 budget position for you and inflated that by the 2.6% inflation to give you an idea of what those services budgets would be. Obviously, we still have to work through the details of that once we have the validated pupil data from the school census, the October school census, and also now that we have the operational guide, the actual inflation that goes in, you know, will be amended as well. But really, it's just agreeing the principles so that we can carry on and set the budget up and do the modelling for you so that we can present that to you in January on the basis of what we have there. So I don't know if there's any questions about that, but I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Stacey. Are there any questions or comments? No. Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll vote to agree the dedelegated services as listed in the report to be used to form the draft 26-27 budget. Now, voting on this item is restricted to local authority maintained schools. So I shall ask the clerk to take a roll call, please.
Chair, will do. Kate Joyner just put her hand up. Did you still want to make a comment?
Only a brief one. So how does the DSG override ending in 2028 impact this? Does it impact it?
Okay, thank you. Liz is shaking her head.
So the override is in specific reference to the high needs block, and this element is not in the high needs block.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Were there any other questions? Apologies for missing a hand. No. So as I said, the vote's restricted to local authority maintained schools. So Clark, perhaps if you could take a roll call for me, please.
Yeah. Alison Banner, for, against, abstain.
4, please.
Adam Breakwell is absent. Stuart Debenham, for, against, abstain.
4. Thank you.
Richard Foster, for, against, abstain.
4.
And Rachel Usher, for, against, abstain.
4.
Okay, that's approved, Chair.
Thank you very much, everybody. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is in fact the final agenda item this morning, the scheme for financing schools, the LMS scheme. And this item is to update the forum on changes to the scheme. So once again, I call on the Head of Strategic Finance, Stacey, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is just an update really for you. There's no report as yet. That will come hopefully in the January meeting. It's just to raise awareness really for school forum members that we are going out to consult on the changes to the scheme for financing schools, just to refine some of the information that we have around leasing arrangements for schools and also for insurance schemes, obviously with the RPA scheme that's in there. From the DFE, just to make sure that that's refined and up to date. We're also going to be taking the opportunity to make some arrangements around the licence deficits for schools. At the moment, our scheme is quite vague in terms of the support there for schools when you are in a deficit position, and if you do get to the point where you need a licence deficit. So what I'm looking to do is refine that with colleagues and make sure that you've got a bit more of a steer and an understanding of how it is that you go through that process if you are in that unfortunate position and make those changes. We're also making a suggestion where we have schools that have previously allocated funding to a committed capital project that they no longer feel is viable because they are approaching a deficit position. And if they have funds set aside from their maintained kind of reserve pots that they've been keeping in that committed capital reserve, that they can actually gain access to that again to be able to help them manage a deficit budget in a difficult year, to allow them to do something differently to turn that around. So I think it's really important just to raise your awareness and let you know that we will be kind of putting some guidance out there for you during December and would welcome your feedback really with a decision to come to forum in January.
Thank you, Stacey. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Liz, thank you.
Yeah, I fully endorse the consultation that Stacey has suggested. Some colleagues on the call will be fully aware of the increasing demands on school budgets and the pressures on potentially entering a deficit position or being in a deficit position. We have really strengthened over the last 12 to 18 months, with the support of some of the colleagues on the call today, the work that is going in to support head teachers and governing bodies who find themselves in that position. And it's very important to the service and to our finance colleagues that our processes reflect that strengthened work that actually operationally is now happening. And so I hope there's a good deal of support for some of the proposals that come through that consultation, which I think better reflect schools' actual experience of working with finance and the service to support them in some difficult times. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on that last agenda item? No, I can't see anybody. So thank you, everyone. This report's just for noting. So unless there's any other business, which I haven't been informed of, I'll move to close the meeting.
Chair, if I could just add one thing, if that's okay. Following the elections in September, we still have 4 vacancies for academy representation on the schools forum. We have gone out to spotlight to no avail. I was just pleading with colleagues, if you know of any heads, vice chairs, finance officers that would like to join the forum, then please post them my way, please. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sure we will do. Thank you, Clark. If there's nothing else, then thank you all for your time and for attending this morning. The next meeting is scheduled to be on Friday, the 23rd of January, 2026. So please, may I now have confirmation that the live stream has stopped?
Well done, Paul. Well done, Jen.
Thank you, Chair.